I'm a man who once loved his wife. I always followed her wishes. However, in the 4th year of our marriage, I realized that I no longer loved her at all. Her care and concern only felt like nagging to me. When she acted cute and playful, it made me feel nauseous. Even when she wore her embarrassing battle outfit, I had no reaction whatsoever. But Willow was the one I had passionately pursued at the beginning. The seeds I planted, the tears I shed, I could only swallow them down myself. Then one day, I saw a conversation on her phone. The message read, "Willow, just once, can we resolve our regrets?" She replied, "I'm sorry, Makoto. My husband loves me very much. I can't betray him." The other side asked, "If I hadn't backed off back then, would you have chosen me?" My wife replied, "I would have." That day, I was in a great mood. I ate 3 bowls of fried rice. The sofa was a bit cramped. When Willow sat down, her thighs in her super-short skirt naturally pressed against mine. I quietly moved my leg 2 centimeters away. A sigh of relief escaped my chest. She didn't notice, surrounded by others and chatting away. It was a class reunion organized by old classmates. As a former campus beauty, she was naturally the center of attention. Willow was composed and graceful, with a hint of aloofness, her usual cold and distant demeanor. One female classmate said, "It's all about our Willow. In just a few years, she's become a famous gold medal lawyer. She's the perfect female lead in a novel." Another female classmate teased, "George, you're lucky to marry Willow. Who didn't know Lou was the campus beauty back then? She used to receive bundles of love letters. You'd better keep an eye on her, or the wolves outside will take advantage." A male classmate laughed. "Why worry? Back then, George's pursuit of Willow was grand and spectacular. Now this second-generation rich kid is about to transform into a powerful CEO. Those monsters outside are no match for him." Amid all the flattery, a male classmate sitting in the corner sneered, making things awkward. Good fortune is truly something to envy. Back then, a rich second generation could snatch away love and still be glorified like this. As expected, people only hear the new one's laughter but never see the old one's tears. As soon as he said that, the atmosphere grew tense. I turned to look at him. He was one of the people who had sent Willow love letters back in the day. His face was flushed, looking like a shrimp, clearly drunk. Willow didn't say anything. She just furrowed her brows and tugged at my sleeve. I understood what she meant. In the past, whenever we encountered someone drunk, she wouldn't let me argue. She hoped I wouldn't say anything. Normally, I wouldn't have responded, but this time was different. I said, "From the way you're talking, it almost sounds like you and Willow were once a couple that I broke up." I rubbed my shoulder and continued. The classmate froze, his face reddening. "I didn't say that. Don't twist my words. What I'm talking about is others. Do you dare say you didn't take advantage of the situation and snatch her from someone else?" All eyes turned to me, glinting with excitement and curiosity. It was an ugly accusation. Even though I didn't want to argue with him, I needed to make myself clear. I looked him straight in the eye and said, "Sorry to disappoint you, but when I was with Willow, she was genuinely single. As for the others you're talking about, if you're referring to—" "Enough." Willow suddenly interrupted me, her voice displeased. She placed her chopsticks on the plate with just the right amount of force, turned her head, and looked as though she was about to get angry. Someone quickly smoothed things over. "George, it's just a joke between classmates. Don't take it seriously. If you do, you've already lost." The male classmate smirked at me sarcastically. I furrowed my brow, wondering where this twisted logic came from. If someone cursed you and you reacted, they'd say, "Don't take it seriously." But just as I opened my mouth, a familiar sensation surged in my chest. This feeling had been with me recently. Whenever Willow spoke, did something, or even when I simply heard her voice, I'd inexplicably feel something strange. It was like eating a leftover bun, only discovering the filling after the 3rd bite. Dry, wrinkled, empty inside, with an unpleasant smell overwhelming what was once savory. It became tasteless, and my interest dwindled. I suddenly lost all desire to argue and closed my mouth. The reunion ended in a lively atmosphere, and everyone bid each other farewell. As we turned to leave, Willow reached out to hook her arm around mine. I slightly raised my hand and coldly avoided it. Willow pursed her lips and glanced at me. Late at night, just before sleep, Willow walked out of the bathroom with wet hair wrapped in a towel. She was a very disciplined woman. Even after so many years of marriage, she still practiced yoga and worked out every day without fail, maintaining her curvy figure. Coupled with her long legs and delicate features, she looked just as stunning as a top-tier actress. There was a time when I was completely enchanted by her appearance. But at that moment, as the door opened, I quietly turned off my phone and closed my eyes. She lay down beside me, her warm breath brushing against my ear. "George, are you asleep?" she asked softly, her voice tinged with desire. When her delicate fingers reached for me, I opened my eyes and gently pressed her hand down. "I'm a bit tired today." She paused, her voice carrying displeasure. "Why are you always so tired?" "Well," I pushed her hand away and adjusted the blanket. "I've been feeling more tired than usual lately. Sorry." She didn't say anything for a long time and didn't move. I sighed in relief, preparing to sleep. Then suddenly, she spoke again, her voice cold. "You don't have to do this." I turned sleepily. "What?" She rolled her eyes. "Lately you've been acting like this, both at home and outside. Isn't it because of Makoto?" I froze. Makoto, Willow's past crush. The same other person mentioned earlier. The first time I saw Willow, she and Makoto were standing together on the campus road, each holding a stack of books, watching me argue with someone. I had just crashed my new car into a fruit vendor's cart. She was crying, demanding compensation. No one believed me when I said it was her fault. Everyone blamed me for being wealthy and bullying the weak. When I was at a loss for words, a female voice spoke up. "When did traffic accident judgments depend on who's rich and who's poor?" I turned around and saw Willow in a white dress, bathed in dappled sunlight, pure, beautiful, graceful, and poised. She captured my heart at first sight. Before I started pursuing Willow, I specifically asked the academic genius Makoto about their relationship. Back then, they were often seen together. Makoto adjusted his glasses, thought for a moment, then smiled. "We're classmates and neighbors." When Willow heard this, she fell silent for a few seconds, frowned, then said, "It's just as he said." I grew up in a wealthy family, and my parents taught me to speak directly. I had never encountered a girl like Willow before. After receiving a satisfactory answer, I began my loud and persistent pursuit. Willow came from a rural area and had a strong sense of pride. She rejected me, saying she wouldn't date anyone during the 10 years she needed to repay her student loans. At that time, my entire world revolved around Willow. Her occasional smile, the rare meals she agreed to share, the tenderness she unconsciously showed, it all fueled my determination. I pursued her for 2 years. She rejected me for 2 years. I finally won her over when her mother fell seriously ill. When they couldn't afford the $300,000 medical bill and Willow was growing thinner after a failed loan application, I opened my savings and sincerely asked her to accept my help. That day, I saw her helplessness and vulnerability, her fragility and gratitude. 3 months later, on the 100th time I confessed, she blushed and threw herself into my arms. I was shaking with excitement. She cried too. "George, how can you love me so much? How am I so lucky?" When Makoto saw Willow and me holding hands at our wedding, his expression faltered for a moment. Later, I walked out of the bathroom and accidentally saw the two of them standing shoulder to shoulder by the balcony railing, talking, just like when I first met them. Their voices drifted over in the wind. "I was waiting for you to speak up back then," Willow said. "George is a good man," Makoto replied. "We were fated, but we didn't end up together." At the time, I thought everyone had youthful crushes. He was married, and Willow and I were doing well. We were each on our own paths. I never imagined life would suddenly shoot a return arrow, and with such force. Half a year ago, Makoto got divorced. He had married a female streamer. After the marriage, he was cheated on, manipulated, and lost everything, including his son. Heartbroken, he came to Willow. A woman's feelings toward a past crush inevitably carry complicated emotions. When Willow received his first call, She hesitated. Maybe she wanted to make up for past regrets. Maybe she wanted to show kindness, or see him regret what he lost. She helped him. For half a year, she gathered evidence, accompanied him to negotiate with his ex-wife, and even spent holidays with his son. At first, I expressed my discomfort. But she looked at me with disappointment and said dejectedly, "Makoto is my neighbor and old classmate. He was swindled, lost everything, and had his child taken away. He was at his wit's end. Isn't it right to help him?" Later, when I was sick and couldn't reach her, I saw her in Makoto's social media posts, looking for houses together, her hands playing with his golden retriever. Slowly, I grew exhausted. I stopped spending time with her. I stopped preparing holiday surprises and gifts. With time and money on my hands, I built my own gaming room and focused on my hobbies. So when she took Makoto and his son to the amusement park, I went out drinking with friends. Makoto's posts no longer stirred anything in me. I almost reflexively liked them. Willow was pleased with my generosity. She even bought a set of battle clothes, saying she wanted to reward me and make a baby. I expressed excitement, but when she tried to get close, I instinctively coughed twice and pushed her away. She paused. A complicated expression crossed her face. From that day on, I realized something shocking. I don't love Willow anymore. That realization left me flustered. No wonder her care felt like nagging. No wonder her cuteness disgusted me. But what should I do? Divorce her? For what reason? I don't love you anymore. No one would believe it. Everyone thought I loved Willow deeply, including Willow herself. Was it emotional distance? Makoto. I knew Willow wasn't casual. Nothing had happened, at least not yet. I was trapped in a dilemma. The more I internalized it, the more I withered, like a pupa trapped in a cocoon, life bleak and hopeless. That night, when Willow mentioned Makoto, an impulse surged within me. My parents taught me to be direct. I was direct when I loved her. Now that I didn't, I should be the same. "Willow," I said quietly in the dark. "How about we?" She coldly snorted and interrupted me. "Don't bring up Makoto. I don't want to hear it, and I don't want to explain." She turned over, displeased. "This weekend is my mother's birthday. Don't wear that long face. I don't want her to worry." I looked out at the bright moon and sighed softly. "I have an art gallery. It was a birthday gift from my mother when I turned 20. She said, when you're tired in body and mind, you'll need a place to think and rest. Don't let negative emotions push you around. Don't make decisions when you're not thinking clearly." In the past 2 years, I'd spent more and more time there. On my mother-in-law's birthday, I arrived at the private room in the restaurant a few minutes late, because I had to receive a newly arrived batch of paintings. As soon as I walked in, I saw Makoto. He was warmly toasting my mother-in-law, speaking rapidly in their hometown dialect, and the two of them laughed from time to time. Willow sat on the sofa beside them, legs crossed, sipping tea with a faint smile. When she saw me, Willow's brows creased slightly. "George," she asked, "didn't I tell you to come earlier? What could possibly be more important today?" I handed the gift to my mother-in-law and gave a brief explanation. She didn't take it, only glanced at me with her drooping eyelids. "You're quite full of yourself, making everyone wait for you," she said. "Do you look down on your country bumpkin mother-in-law?" I didn't respond. I simply placed the gift in front of her and took an empty seat. That was how my mother-in-law always spoke. For a long time after we got married, she often made sarcastic remarks, implying that I was just another man in the long line of suitors for her daughter, not even worth mentioning. I had brought it up with Willow a few times. I genuinely didn't understand. Even if we weren't family, considering that I had saved her life with my money when she was on the brink of death, she shouldn't have treated me with such hostility. But Willow always said, "My mom had a hard life when she was young. She's always been this way, even with me. You need to be more understanding." Over the past few months, though, I had suddenly stopped caring about my mother-in-law's attitude. Her sarcasm and coldness no longer affected me. It felt as though an unfamiliar old woman was talking about someone else entirely. Makoto smiled and said, "George, Aunt insisted that I join you all today. I hope you don't mind." I looked at him, smiled, and replied, I don't mind at all. Feel free to come. He hesitated for a moment, then continued, I know I've asked your wife for help many times recently. Please don't take it personally, and don't let it affect your relationship. I smiled. Not at all. Your fellow villagers and classmates. It's only right to help. Feeling thirsty after unloading the paintings earlier, I grabbed a grape from the table and popped it into my mouth. Makoto went on, just so you know, Willow mentioned she couldn't get a cab, so I offered to pick her up. Then she said it would be too much of a detour and didn't want to trouble me, so we came together. Can you believe it? She's still the same, never wanting to bother anyone. I put another grape into my mouth and said casually, You didn't need to pick me up. I have a driver. As for the car ride, there's no misunderstanding. She can ride with whoever she wants. There's no need to tell me. Makoto looked slightly surprised and gave an awkward smile. I turned my head and saw Willow staring at me intently, her gaze tinged with displeasure. That look again. In the past, whenever I saw it, I knew she was upset, and I would immediately start wondering what I had said wrong. Now, I couldn't be bothered to figure it out. During the meal, the three of them chatted in their hometown dialect while I silently stared at my phone. Suddenly, a glass of juice was placed in front of me. Willow spoke softly, Honey, you seem to really like those grapes. I asked the waiter to make you a glass of juice. I was momentarily speechless. I don't usually drink juice, I said. I prefer to eat the fruit directly. Then I looked at Makoto. Do you like this? Go ahead and have it. I pushed the glass toward him. No need to be shy. Take it. Willow abruptly stood up and said coldly, I'm going to the bathroom. Partway through the meal, I stepped outside to take a call from one of my employees. When I returned to the private room, I heard my mother-in-law's raised voice speaking in her dialect. You've been married to him for so long, but he's so suspicious of people. That villa he bought before the wedding, 4 years, and he still hasn't transferred the ownership. He didn't even add your name to the deed. He's plotting against you. I froze, my hand stopping just short of pushing the door open. Yes, I understood their dialect. When we first got married, I did a lot for Willow, and to understand my mother-in-law better, I had deliberately learned it. Willow sounded impatient. Mom, I've told you before to stop saying things like that. George loves me. He's done so much for our family. If he hears this, he'll think we're after his family's money. My mother-in-law sighed. If it weren't for my illness back then, you wouldn't have sacrificed your happiness to be with him. Makoto wouldn't have married that kind of woman. But it's not too late. Things are different now. He supported you when he had money, and now he's helped you get your law firm up and running. Business is booming. Divorce doesn't seem like such a big deal anymore. Makoto spoke up, Aunt, it's not right for you to say that. I slowly widened my eyes. If Willow agreed. The room fell silent for a moment. Then Willow's cold voice broke the silence. I can't betray George. We're husband and wife. Mom, he helped you in the past. Don't say things like this again. A rush of mixed emotions surged through me. I didn't know whether I should feel relieved or disappointed. Willow and I eventually had an argument because of Makoto's dog. That day, when I came home, I was shocked to see Makoto sitting on the sofa. The golden retriever from his social media posts lay at his feet. He smiled and explained, Willow left some legal documents at home, so we came back to grab them. My gaze fell on the dog. It was fiercely tugging at a crocheted toy with its mouth, the same crocheted orange cat my mother had made for me before she passed away. She had said, I've given you many things, but those were bought with money. Before I leave, I want to make something for you by hand. Every stitch is my love for you. When you see this crocheted cat, it'll be like seeing me. After my mother passed away, I placed the crocheted cat on the TV cabinet so I could see it every day. I was even afraid to touch it, worried I might ruin it or cause the yarn to fray. Now it was clenched in the dog's mouth, being pawed and tugged violently. The yarn snapped, stuffing flying everywhere. A buzzing filled my head. I couldn't make a sound. My face twisted into a snarl, my movements stiff as I tried to pry the dog's mouth open. My mind went blank. All I could hear were Makoto's shouts and the dog's desperate howls. Willow ran out of the room, screaming, "George, have you lost your mind? Why are you abusing the dog? Is it really worth it? It's just a few bucks." Shaking, I lifted the torn crocheted cat in front of her and growled, "A few bucks? Is this really just a few bucks to you?" It seemed Willow suddenly remembered where the cat came from. Panic spread across her face as she rushed to hug me. Her voice trembled. "I'm sorry, George. I'm so sorry. We'll get it fixed. We'll find someone to repair it. I promise it'll be good as new." I clenched my teeth and slapped her across the face. "Get out. Get out of here." Her head snapped to the side, 5 clear finger marks blooming on her fair skin. She froze, eyes wide as she stared at me. "Willow, are you all right?" Makoto rushed over, frantically touching her face, then turned on me, furious. "How could you hit a woman? What kind of nonsense is this over some broken thing? How much do you want? I'll pay you 100, 1,000, whatever you want. It was my dog that ruined it. But what kind of man hits a woman? Come at me instead. Are you even her husband?" Before he could finish, I grabbed his collar and punched him square in the nose, catching him off guard. I was about to hit him again when a wave of fury swallowed me, as if I were trapped under a sealed dome. The outside world became distant and muffled. The scene before me fractured into frozen images: the shredded crocheted cat, Makoto's bloody mouth, Willow's stunned stare. Then everything went black, and I collapsed. I dreamed. By the river, on green grass, my mother sat beneath a tree, wearing a brightly patterned floral dress, gazing into the distance. I ran toward her, shouting happily, "Mom!" She turned and smiled at me, saying something. Her voice was soft and warm, clear in my ears, yet no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't understand the words. I jolted awake, drenched in sweat, panicked. By the bedside, Willow was staring at me. I instinctively turned my head away, unwilling to look at her. "It's fixed," she said. "You can take a look." In the silent room, her voice sounded harsh to me. A brand-new crocheted cat appeared before my eyes. I took it, ran my hand over it, and said flatly, "It's not the same one. The yarn was different. The stuffing was different. It wasn't the original." Willow bit her lip and stayed quiet for a moment before speaking softly. "It's all my fault today. Makoto felt really guilty when he found out what happened. He stayed here waiting for you to wake up so he could apologize, and he didn't leave until very late. Please don't blame him. I spent the whole night fixing the cat. I know it's not enough to make up for everything. You can blame me, hate me, I'll accept it all." I sighed deeply and turned my head, silently looking at her. Her fair, delicate face still bore the faint marks from my slap, making someone usually so careful about her appearance look unusually vulnerable. Noticing my gaze, Willow relaxed slightly. The corner of her lips lifted into a smile, her expression softening. "Honey, I knew you'd spoil me the most. You won't really stay mad at me. You were a bit impulsive today, but I understand. Just don't let Mom know about this. From now on, I'll keep my distance from Makoto." "Let's divorce," I said suddenly, cutting her off. Willow tilted her head, clearly thinking she had misheard. "What did you say?" "I said, let's divorce," I repeated calmly. Her brows knitted tightly. She took a deep breath, her voice restrained. "George, I know you're still upset, but harsh words hurt. Didn't we agree to never mention divorce again?" I knew she was referring to the time, a year after we married, when my company ran into financial trouble and nearly went bankrupt. I was overwhelmed with work. She got angry, saying I never spent time with her, that we hadn't gone on vacation in ages. In the heat of the argument, I mentioned divorce. She was devastated and immediately packed up and moved out. I spent an entire month drowning in regret. After countless apologies to my mother-in-law, I finally convinced Willow to come back. That night, as she lay in my arms, looking wronged and fragile, I promised I would never say such things again. I sighed heavily. "All right," Willow interrupted, standing up. "I don't want to hear this right now. You're angry, and I'll pretend I didn't hear it. Also, you hit me today. Technically, that's a serious issue. There's no excuse for hitting anyone, especially me. But I understand your feelings, and I'm willing to be understanding. You can't keep going like this. You need to pull yourself together. Get some rest tonight. I have a case tomorrow and need to prepare materials. I'll leave now." After Willow left, I stood silently by the window. Outside, it was pitch dark, not a single star in sight, like an impenetrable cover. In the following days, Willow seemed like a completely different person. She no longer bossed me around or forced me to guess her moods. Instead, she spoke gently and took great care of me. She even had the nanny help while she cooked meals herself, and she never mentioned Makoto again. If this change had happened a year earlier, I would have been overjoyed. Now, it only irritated me. The sound of her coming home, her slippers shuffling across the floor, her quiet conversations with the nanny, the sound of water from the bathroom, everything grated on my nerves. It felt like damp, gloomy moss creeping over my neck, arms, and legs, spreading until it covered me completely. I went back to my old home. 3 years after my mother passed away, my father remarried his assistant and started a new life. I didn't oppose it. I even gave a heartfelt speech at their wedding. But the house I had lived in for over 20 years, filled with memories of my mother, felt strange with another woman living there. Without realizing it, I began visiting less often. Fortunately, I still had the gallery, my own gallery. I couldn't thank my mother enough for her foresight. My father was happy to see me and told my stepmother to bring me water and fruit. In the study, I told him about my plans for divorce. He paused for a few seconds, then said calmly, "Willow already told me what happened. I think it was just an accident. You don't need to take it so seriously. You're a man, you don't have to sweat the small stuff. You can't keep holding on to it. Even if your mom were still alive, she would say the same." I shook my head. "It's not about that." My father studied me for a moment. His expression darkened slightly as he asked quietly, Has she been?" "No," I replied. "Nothing like that." He let out a relieved sigh. "Do you have someone else?" I frowned and answered, "No." He asked again, "Then did she bring it up?" "Neither," I replied. "I just don't love her anymore." My dad fell silent. After a long while, he spoke in a low voice. "George, what did your mom and I always tell you? Think things through before making any decisions, especially when it comes to marriage. Don't act impulsively like before and regret it later." I stood up and said softly, "Dad, I've already made up my mind. I'm just here to let you know in advance." My dad looked at me for a long moment, then sighed. When I left, my stepmother followed me out. She studied me for a while, pressed her lips together, and said, "George, you're getting older. You should be more mature, more steady. Saying divorce so lightly, do you realize how many complications it will cause? A family like ours can't afford a divorce. If you can, just endure it and live with it. You can't keep making your dad deal with your problems. He's getting older. As his child, it's time you start thinking about him." I frowned but said nothing. Willow looked at me with resentment in her eyes and asked, "George, is it really that hard for me to stop contacting Makoto from now on?" The nanny, who had watched me grow up and stayed with me after my mother passed away, spoke up. "Mrs. Liu is actually a good person. Mr. Wang, finding such a good woman isn't easy. Don't let the fact that she sometimes loses her temper with you fool you. It's a sign that she cares. If you keep sulking like this, aren't you just pushing your wife away?" In my dream, the old George sneered at me. "You chased her back with everything you had. What right do you have to complain now?" That night, when the nanny was off, Willow went to the gym. I had a headache and went to bed early. When I woke up, I felt a fever coming on. The room spun, and I felt awful. I glanced at my phone. It was 11 p.m. I forced myself to call Willow. No answer. I immediately dialed 120 and gave them the house password. When I woke up in the hospital, Willow was sitting beside my bed. The moment I opened my eyes, she anxiously grabbed my arm, her voice trembling. "I'm so sorry, George. There was traffic last night, and I didn't get home in time. I'm so glad you called 120 yourself. The doctor said it would have been much worse if you'd waited any longer." I gently pulled my arm away. "I'm fine now. You should go back to the office." She stared at me in disbelief. "George, I'm your wife. Of course I should be here with you in the hospital. What's going on with you lately?" I didn't answer. I closed my eyes. While Willow slept beside my bed, I saw Makoto's latest social media post. It read, "The dog had indigestion last night, and it made someone so anxious that they cried. We went from one hospital to another, just like taking care of a child. What I want to say is, in the end, the girl who's always been willing to share everything with me has been there all along." The photo showed the golden retriever sleeping on someone's lap. The person's face was slightly blurred, but I recognized Willow immediately. Earlier, when the doctor examined me, they mentioned that my phone had received a call from my wife around 1 a.m. That was when she found out I was in the hospital and rushed over. That meant Willow didn't return home until after 1 a.m., and only then realized I was missing. I stared at Willow's sleeping face. She must have been exhausted after everything that happened that night. Before falling asleep, she had been staring at her phone, her expression heavy, tinged with melancholy. I felt a dull ache in my chest and picked up her phone. The password hadn't changed. It was still the date I confessed to her. When I unlocked it, I saw her WeChat messages. "Makoto, Willow, I acted on impulse just now, but I like you so much. I just want to settle our regrets this one time. Willow, I'm sorry, Makoto. My husband loves me very much. I can't betray him. Makoto, if I hadn't backed off, would you have chosen me? Willow, I would have." I was speechless. Well then, this was great. When Willow woke up, she saw George sitting by the window, eating fried rice. He ate slowly, one bite at a time, savoring it, as if enjoying every mouthful. She froze for a moment. It had been a long time since she had seen George like this. Relaxed. Yes, relaxed. That was the first word that came to her mind. The first day she met him, he had been arguing with someone, yet when he listened to the vendor speak, he paid close attention, as if listening to a lecture. When the vendor twisted the facts, George's expression shifted from shock to confusion, even showing a hint of curiosity, but never anger. Willow knew he was a rich second-generation man, someone who had never needed to deal with problems himself and had no experience with arguments. That day, she, usually distant and cold, broke the persona she had maintained for over 20 years and spoke up to defend him. Makoto was surprised. She was surprised too. But she also felt happy, relieved, and elated, because she saw the way George looked at her, eyes wide, full of admiration. When George confessed to her with flowers in hand, she could hardly believe it. How could someone like him like someone like her? In other people's eyes, she was cold, distant, and unapproachable. Only she knew that her indifference was just a mask for deep insecurity and fear. Her father had been a gambler and died early. Her mother loved her deeply, yet also showed a sharp, petty, mercenary side that Willow despised. It was a guilt she could never escape. She surrendered to fate and accepted the life that seemed most suitable for her. The first car George drove made it clear, they came from completely different worlds. So she rejected him without hesitation. But he stubbornly pursued her for 2 years. Loudly. Everyone knew about it. She was reserved, reluctant to express her feelings, unable to understand how someone could be so straightforward and public with love. Only much later did she realize, he could be that bold because he lacked nothing in love. Though she rejected him again and again, she had to admit that George's persistent affection slowly healed the wounds left by her family, helping her regain confidence and a sense of self-worth. Then her mother's $300,000 medical bill dragged her back to reality. For the first time, she truly understood the destructive power of poverty. When George sincerely took out $300,000 from what he called his small savings to help her, she was moved and wanted to laugh. The entire village could barely scrape together $50,000, yet he called that a small amount. The stark, almost mocking difference between them hurt her deeply. From that moment on, she began criticizing George, picking at his flaws to cover her own sense of inferiority. After George invested in her law firm, she became even prouder. She enjoyed George's admiration and the teasing praise from friends who joked that she had turned her husband into a puppy. She truly believed she was independent, strong, invincible. She knew her mother sometimes spoke too harshly to George, but she didn't mind. People who live at the bottom for too long develop rough edges and aggression. Without it, they can't fight for limited resources. Besides, it was her mother. George should tolerate it. And he did. Occasionally he would complain, but in the end, he always sighed and said, all right, let it go this time. But could you say something nice about me to your mother next time? She always promised she would. But before she ever praised George in front of her mother, Makoto suddenly appeared. He showed up in a daze, asking her for help. Willow's feelings toward Makoto were complicated. Back in school, they were close because they came from the same hometown and high school. She always thought that even without words, there was an unspoken understanding between them. Similar backgrounds. Similar struggles. Both had climbed their way into an elite school. She didn't expect George to describe Makoto as just a fellow villager and classmate. She felt a flicker of resentment. She knew Makoto had once developed feelings for a small-time streamer. But her resentment wasn't about love, it was about the humiliation of being discarded by someone from her past. Half a year ago, Makoto suddenly called her, his voice low, begging for help. The man who had once abandoned her now spoke with humility, desperation. It gave her an inexplicable sense of satisfaction. So, under her new identity as an independent woman, she helped him. Makoto looked at her with admiration and regret. During that time, Willow indulged in the satisfaction of winning back the man who had hurt her, and completely ignored George. She sensed George had changed recently. He no longer prepared gifts for her, didn't hug or kiss her, avoided eye contact, and no longer complimented her no matter how she dressed. But she didn't think much of it. She was sure George loved her deeply. He was just a little jealous. Once her emotional needs were satisfied, she could act cute, and everything would return to normal. She had never met anyone easier to appease than George. A pout, a pitiful look, a soft tone, and he would immediately smile and say, all right, who can resist you when you're my wife? But when did she realize this time was different? That night at the reunion, after she spoke sharply to him in front of everyone, he said little. But when they left, he naturally avoided her hand. She once saw a question online, what is physiological love? She had laughed, certain that George's love for her was exactly that. But this time, he avoided her hand. That small detail unsettled her. She wanted George to go back to how he was before. Their physical relationship had always been harmonious. Her body, her skin, her soft moans, she had brought him endless pleasure. So this time it should work. She put on a set of lingerie that even made her shy to wear. But George pushed her away. I'm too tired, he said calmly, without a trace of emotion. Willow felt anger, grievance, and an indescribable helplessness mixed together. At the same time, Makoto began deliberately creating subtle ambiguity, his hand brushing her calf while picking up files, his breath near her ear when speaking, the way he casually draped an arm over her shoulders while reminiscing about his ex-wife. Unconsciously, she was seeking balance. A voice deep inside her whispered, you are always excellent. Someone will always bend for you. If not this one, then another. So she allowed herself to sink into the unspoken ambiguity with Makoto, just like before. But the torn cat snapped her back to reality. She saw George like that for the first time, broken. His eyes held anger, resolve, even disgust. She was shocked, unable to believe it, unable to accept it. Is this really the George the first no? How could he look at her like that? Panic surged through her, deep and uncontrollable, as if something rooted deep in her soul was slowly drifting away. She consciously began treating him more gently, believing it would surely make him happy. She had always been sharp and harsh with George, and most of their arguments stemmed from her temper. With Makoto, she reduced contact. But George still casually mentioned divorce. Worse, he seemed unmotivated, detached, indifferent. To be honest, she was angry. She felt she had done everything right. But George didn't budge. Maybe she had been too kind. Maybe he had grown too comfortable. That night, after yoga, she received a call from Makoto. His voice was urgent. His dog was sick and might not make it. He asked if she wanted to come. She agreed immediately. After returning from the vet, Makoto suddenly said in a low voice, Willow, I was thinking about when we were in school. how we always stayed by each other's side. I wish I had understood my feelings back then. Maybe it was George's recent distance. Maybe it was the lingering rush of endorphins from yoga. Somehow, they kissed. From the sofa to the bedroom to the bed. Makoto was far more frantic and restless than she had expected. He tore off his own clothes and roughly stripped hers off. He did things George never would, as if waves of passion were sweeping over her. But somewhere amidst the chaos, she heard a roar. "Willow!" It was George. She suddenly snapped back to reality, shoved Makoto away, grabbed her clothes, and rushed out of the room. George was eating another bowl of fried rice. Willow froze in place. She asked, "George, are you very hungry?" George turned his head, his eyes clear. "Yeah, I'm really hungry. It feels like I haven't had such good fried rice in a long time." Seeing how content he looked, Willow's mood lifted. The guilt and self-reproach from the previous night vanished. She smiled and walked over, her tone light and relaxed. "Honey, I've always loved you. Everything's in the past now. We'll be fine from now on." George didn't respond. He focused on finishing the last bite of rice, wiped his mouth with a tissue, and finally said, "Willow, I'm going to be away for a while." She asked, "Where to?" George smiled faintly. "The gallery is holding a Sea City-themed exhibition. I need to visit the area for a while." Willow looked at his eyes, the ones etched into her heart from the first time they met. Her mood lifted, a sense of relief washing over her. She lowered her gaze. "When you come back, let's have a child." George left. He packed a suitcase, wore a casual outfit he hadn't worn in a while, put on headphones and sunglasses, hummed a song, and waved goodbye. Willow called him frequently. Sometimes he answered, sometimes he didn't. "The signal is poor in the mountains," he said. For some reason, despite George having gone away for business trips many times, this time Willow felt an overwhelming desire to be with him. When the calls didn't go through, she searched online for information about Sea City, its sights, mountain streams, and climate. She imagined George moving happily through it all. She chuckled to herself, unsure why she felt this way, but she couldn't stop. Only this made her feel a little at peace. Makoto came to find her. Since she had cut off contact with him, he came directly. The day after Willow had fled in panic, he had asked her that question, whether she would choose him. Willow had answered seriously, yes. At that time, she would have. After all, before Makoto confessed his feelings, they had been only a step away from breaking the unspoken barrier between them. On another level, giving him this answer offered him some comfort. For Willow, the regret of her youth, being abandoned, found closure that night when Makoto had begged her not to leave, desperately trying to claim her. She had successfully proven that Makoto had made a mistake he could never make right. Makoto came with alcohol. He looked at her with sadness. "I'm here to say goodbye." Willow bit her lip, silent. Goodbye. Goodbye to the past youth. Goodbye to the insecure girl she used to be. They drank cup after cup, from day to night. Their gazes grew blurred, their blood flowing fiercely, and she slowly lost her senses. Eventually, when the door lock clicked open and George appeared in the doorway, dragging his suitcase, Willow and Makoto were on the living room carpet, sweating, entangled, unable to part. In a panic, Willow met George's eyes. She froze, unsure how to break free from the tangled arms and legs. Her voice was nothing but gasping breaths. Long after, when her brain had aged and forgotten many things from her youth, she would still remember that moment, the sticky damp skin, the fresh cold air rushing through the open door, and George's slightly pleased tone. "Willow, let's get a divorce." The day they went to get the divorce certificate, George's father suddenly rushed in and slapped her hard across the face. He shouted angrily, "My son has never been humiliated like this in his life. And now because of you, he has lost all his dignity." Father Wong slapped himself, gritting his teeth. "Back then, his mother didn't approve of George marrying you. I fought hard to persuade her. Now I see I was blind. It's my fault as his father." Willow stood motionless, head lowered. Beside them, Mother Lu didn't back down and started arguing with Father Wong. She mocked, "Stop pretending. You Wong family never had anything good. Who in their right mind signs a prenuptial agreement? Even in divorce, you've already calculated how to split the assets. My Willow's been with your Wong family all these years, and you still haven't put her name on the villa deed. You two, father and son, are disgusting. It's better to divorce sooner." She slapped Willow's back harshly. "Why aren't you saying anything? Just standing there and taking it? After the divorce, we won't be family anymore, so what's there to be afraid of?" Willow felt as if their voices were far away, meaningless. She stood there, not leaving, only to see George one last time. The divorce process was fast. From the day George mentioned it, she had only seen him 3 times. She had so much to say, so much to confess, to beg him for another chance. But George always wore a mask, showing a calm demeanor. She felt sad and heartbroken, convinced he was just pretending. At that moment, George walked out, talking on the phone. Willow stepped forward, opening her mouth, but George raised his hand, signaling for her to wait, quietly saying into the phone, "Sorry, I'm conducting an interview, just a moment." "What school did you graduate from?" he continued, walking toward a tree nearby. The call lasted a long time. Father Wong left, and Mother Lu also left. Only Willow remained, quietly waiting, trying to calm herself and repeatedly thinking about what she would say next. Finally, George hung up. Willow bit her lip, feeling nervous. George looked up at the tall tree above, let out a long sigh, and started walking away. His steps were light, carefree, without a glance back at her. He had completely forgotten about her. Willow stood frozen, like a statue, unmoving. After the divorce, Willow went to see George a few times. She thought the divorce was just the end of a punishment for a mistake, and that she could start anew. At that time, George had pursued her. Now it would be her turn. But George's attitude left her feeling lost. There was no sarcasm, no disgust. They would sip tea and chat a little. He treated her like an ordinary old friend. A few times, when guests arrived, he would unhesitatingly leave her behind and walk toward others. She had no choice but to silently come and silently leave. Makoto came to see her a few times. Sometimes alone, sometimes with Lu's mother. Each time, she would scream at him to leave. Once, unable to take it anymore, she slapped Makoto across the face. In return, he pushed her against the wall, cursing. "Stop pretending. Did I force you? You clearly had feelings for me too. Can you blame me? You say I got you drunk, but if you didn't have those intentions, would you have brought a man back to your place? You're a slut and still want to keep up appearances. You still want to go back to George? Dream on. He doesn't want you anymore." When he was in Sea City, he posted about his wife having someone else in her heart, whether he should step aside if his wife cheated, saying love should take a step back at its peak. I was stupid and fell for it. Later I found out his posts were only visible to me. He left to give you and me the chance to say those things to provoke me into seeking you out. He even said when he would return just to make sure we crossed paths. How about that? Your so-called loving husband also has a side you don't know about, right? Willow listened in a daze, struggling to process every word. She remembered how he had stopped having any physical contact, how he no longer showed her any emotions or affection, how he mentioned divorce that day. It was all true. He had already decided to leave her back then. Willow hadn't been to the law firm in a while. The assistant called to report bad news. She didn't want to listen and didn't feel like hearing it. She used to be full of energy, handling case after case to earn George's approval. But now, it seemed meaningless. Until one day, when she was about to leave, the assistant called again. The firm is insolvent. She froze for a moment, then laughed lightly, almost indifferently, and went to the gallery. She visited almost every day, but no longer appeared in front of George. She only sat at the cafe across the street, watching him through the glass. One time, George looked at her with a troubled expression. "Willow, can you stop showing up in front of me? Every time I see you, it brings back bad memories." Her face turned pale, her fingertips trembling as she left. Afterward, she only watched from afar. She watched him walk into the gallery facing the morning sun, laughing with colleagues at lunch, working hard unloading paintings with the staff. She felt both happy and sad. Happy because George had become the cheerful young man he used to be. Sad because everything about him no longer belonged to her. She and her mother had no place to stay, so they rented a small house. Her mother cried and screamed every day, sometimes cursing angrily. "It's all that damn man's fault. If it weren't for him wanting a divorce, we wouldn't be in this miserable situation. We don't even have a house. He took all the money with him. He ruined everything." Willow sarcastically asked her mother, "Weren't we always living like this? We're just back to where we started. How can you blame George? Didn't George save your life?" One night, her mother didn't return after going out to collect scrap. Willow went to look for her and found her being dragged by a woman yelling, "You old hag, throwing your old cheap clothes at me? Are you crazy? If you don't pay for this, don't even think about leaving." Willow recognized the woman, Makoto's ex-wife. Makoto stood silently not far away, embarrassed and guilty, yet silent. Willow paid the woman the last 5,000 yuan, leaving herself with nothing. She decided to leave the city with her mother. Her hometown had a house and an orange orchard. At least there, she and her mother could survive. Before leaving, she went to the gallery one last time, getting a little closer, hoping to hear George's voice. George was chatting and drinking with friends, laughing heartily, carefree like the young man he used to be. Someone asked, "George, how did your divorce go so smoothly? You didn't even let her take the villa." George sighed. "I promised my mom when I got married that for the first 3 years I wouldn't add my wife's name to the house deed." His friend said in surprise, "But you've been married for 4 years, right?" George smiled candidly. "Yeah, but in the 4th year, I decided I didn't want to add her name anymore." That night, Willow left on the green train. In the drowsy compartment, she stared silently out the window. A full moon hung high in the sky, shining down on the dark earth. Once, she had her own moon. It had shone on her, warmed her, nurtured her. She had grown roots, blossomed, and faced the world with her head held high. But now, the moon no longer shone. She returned to the dark silence, back to where she began. No light remained.